The silence in the St. Jude's Cathedral wasn't just respectful, it was heavy. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving 300 guests gasping in a vacuum of pure, unadulterated shock. I stood there, my Vera Wang lace veil pushed back, my hands steady as a surgeon's. I wasn't crying, I wasn't shaking. In fact, I'd never felt more awake in my entire life. Opposite me, Kenji looked like he'd seen a ghost. His jaw was literally hanging open, his expensive silk tie slightly crooked. Behind him, my maid of honor, Sarah, had turned a shade of gray that matched her bridesmaid dress perfectly. The giant LED screen I'd insisted on installing for the Kona tribute slideshow wasn't showing childhood photos of us at the beach. No, it was showing a crystal clear 4K feed from the Nest camera hidden in my own living room. On the screen, Kenji and Sarah were tangled together on my velvet sofa, the one my grandmother gave me. They weren't just together, they were laughing. They were holding glasses of my 1945 Krug champagne, a bottle worth $5,000 that I was saving for our first anniversary. She's so easy to play. Kenji's voice echoed through the cathedral's professional-grade subwoofers. The audio was crisp. Her dad's trust fund is basically an open ATM. Once the papers are signed today, I'm moving the first $500,000 to the Cayman account. We'll give it 6 months. I'll file for a mental health divorce. And then it's just us and the Maldives, Sarah. Just us and Hana's money. Sarah's laugh on the recording sounded like broken glass. I can't believe she let me plan the whole thing. I even charged her a 20% consultation fee on the flowers. We're literally getting paid to destroy her. I looked at Kenji's mother in the front row. In our culture, face is everything. I watched as her hand went to her throat, her face draining of color. I watched my own father, a man who had built a tech empire from nothing, slowly stand up. His eyes weren't on the screen anymore. They were locked on Kenji. And if looks could kill, Kenji would have dropped dead before the video finished looping. You were saying your vows, Kenji, I said, my voice calm, projected perfectly by the lapel mic, something about in sickness and in health. Or was it until my bank account do us part? The congregation erupted, not into cheers but into a low, terrifying roar of whispers and gasps. I saw Kenji's best man take a step away from him, physically distancing himself from the wreckage. I saw Sarah try to bolt for the side exit, only to find the doors locked, just as I'd instructed the security team I'd hired under the guise of paparazzi protection. Everything I thought I knew about my life for the last 3 years was a lie. The late nights at the office, he was with her. The investment opportunities he asked my father to look into, he was skimming off the top. The stress-induced lack of intimacy, he was just exhausted from giving all his energy to my best friend. They thought they were the architects of my ruin. They thought I was the quiet, dutiful Japanese-American girl who would just nod and smile while they bled me dry. They forgot one thing. I'm a graphic designer. I notice every pixel. I see every flaw in the image, and I'd been photoshopping their downfall for the last 3 weeks. The wedding is over. I announced to the room, looking directly into the camera lens of the videographer who was capturing every second of this for my private records. But the litigation, that's just getting started. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I found out that the 2 people I loved most in the world were actually the 2 people who wanted to see me homeless and broken. I met Kenji at a charity gala for Asian American entrepreneurs in San Francisco. At the time, I was 24, and my career as a graphic designer was just beginning to skyrocket. I had just landed a contract with a major tech firm to handle their entire rebranding, and I was feeling invincible. Kenji was 30, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that screamed old money, even though I later found out it was leased. He had this way of listening, tilting his head slightly, locking eyes with you, that made you feel like you were the only person in a room of 500. He introduced himself as an independent venture consultant. In the beginning, that sounds impressive. It's a vague enough title to cover a lot of ground. He talked about synergy, early-stage seed funding, and disrupting the market. I was a designer, a creative, I didn't know much about the granular details of venture capital, but I knew that my father, Hiroshi, had made his fortune in semiconductors. Kenji seemed to know that too. Within 20 minutes, he wasn't just flirting with me. He was asking intelligent, pointed questions about my father's recent shift into philanthropic endowments. Sarah, my best friend since middle school, was there that night too. She was my ride or die, or so I thought. Sarah had always been the more outgoing one, the girl who could talk her way into any VIP section. She was a freelance marketing coordinator, always between big projects, and I'd spent years helping her out, paying for her dinners, letting her use my guest room, even designing her portfolios for free. When she saw me talking to Kenji, she didn't act jealous. She acted like a supportive sister. She glided over, laughed at his jokes, and whispered in my ear, "Hana, he's a total catch. Don't let this one go." Looking back, the choreography of their first meeting was too perfect. Sarah didn't just meet Kenji, she validated him. She provided the social proof I needed to lower my guard. Within 3 months, Kenji and I were inseparable. He was the perfect boyfriend. He'd show up at my studio at 2 a.m. with high-end sushi and ginger tea because he knew I stayed up late working on layouts. He'd leave little notes in my sketchbooks. He even spent weekends at my parents' estate in Napa, helping my father in the koi pond or discussing Japanese history. My father is a hard man to impress. He's a read the fine print kind of guy, but Kenji played the role of the dutiful, traditional son-in-law to a T. The first yellow flat, we really wanted to adopt countries from daytime, and I wanted to stay in my loft, which I owned outright. But Kenji insisted we needed a fresh start for our joint future. He found this stunning penthouse overlooking the bay. The rent was astronomical, $14,000 a month. "I'm just waiting for a massive carry fee from a deal in Singapore to clear," Kenji told me over dinner, looking genuinely frustrated. "The wire transfer is caught in some regulatory red tape because of the amount. It's nearly 7 figures. Hana, honey, could you cover the security deposit and the first 3 months? I'll reimburse you the second the Singapore funds hit, with interest." I didn't even hesitate. Why would I? I loved him. I had the money. My design firm was netting $500,000 a year, and my trust fund was sitting there, growing. I wrote a check for nearly $60,000. Kenji kissed my forehead and called me his partner in every sense of the word. Around the same time, Sarah's career suddenly took a turn for the better. She told me she'd landed a high net worth client who wanted her to manage a private family office's branding. She started wearing Dior. I know you made this big progress. I know you were working with me and seeing me for years. And I know I was touched bad for me. I know that no longer it was like. I wanted to tell you, we were all the best party, all the party. My dad, Kenji, and Sarah started sustainable and not quite. Вилетали Токио на выходные, угоняли в ресторанах со звездами Мишлен. И почти всегда платила я. Kenji, может нам стоит немного поумерить расходы, пока твой перевод из Сингапура не пришел. I sprustled du iodne, questions from my favorite. I sprayed to write my hand and wish you're all here to wait to see if I was gonna dead, but wouldn't work. I sprayed to write my hand, to write my favorite. I finally met my favorite. I having trouble. He's gonna die. He wants me to be here. I sprayed to write my favorite. If you feel not to believe, you must perform and take me out of the cloud. I will buy you all of the building. If you feel not to believe, this is where the day would be out of the cloud, will fall from the ladder of me. You just take a break, like I didn't want you to believe, and you shouldn't be like, and no, you will have a break. That day will be worse. Kana, no be too mellow. In this girldy, Vospriation is everything, and whatever we know is everyone being there Well, also, tell me what to do with you. And whatever we know is always going to come in the moment of the day of week of 10 years of time. That's what I want to do, to go to London and not relate to seeing the fall of the cause is fun. Ginga который, как я теперь понимаю, бо я часто тексум, что Kenji выманивал у меня под видом операционных расходов без своего консультирования. Это была идеальная круговая порука. I was not speaking to my social death to barely be an ill use of suffering. Sarah, who in some way cried all life from Ken's ched, and me must come back with a sad success. Kenj nodded me to barely be speaking to Kenja's. He saw the ones that let the boys behind. He saw the look of the blue box which blowed undermined. He played the bowl with his legs behind him. These problems will drive in many ways. He does all the fights to me. It's not what I want. When I get to leave, what title is my own? When I get to leave any 10 times more months before me, I smug a tiny bit of death, for me in many. It was avoided and fell for my breath. This is not my future. Not everyone. I just feel something poorly. I choose feeling selfish to my breath, that no one can even be here.
Он сделал мне предложение, матчас на яхте, как он якобы арендовал. Позже я нашла счет, выставленный на мою корпоративную карту, который он скрыл в разделе «Расходы на маркетинг». Я была на седьмом небе, кольцо было огромным.
3 карата, чистейший бриллиант. Это стоило мне огромных усилий, Хана, прошептал он, нагибая кольцо мне на палец. Я хочу, чтобы ты знала. И тебя, don't краса моя лучшая. I never know. She was the right man. You know why? You know. I never know. I never know that you need to see me. I need to see the outlook. I know why. I never know. I know why. I know. That I know. That I never know. I never know. That I never know. That I never know. I never know. When I need to see the outlook. And Sarah... Бесплатно, Хана. Для тебя это мой свадебный подарок. Она начала бронировать лучшие площади, заказывать цветы из Голландии, нанимать кейтеринг, который обслуживал королевские семьи. Every раз, when I видел Shota, I was crucialist Glover, but Kenji and Sarah feel at unison, peel, and to Joe, peace. It's smart good. It's the last crusher of my city. Your father, Legans, will be. The so Lego, I really need nothing. Kenji Devon beetled my father whittle it, me big grant, in $5 million to his new fund. How just a very mission spa, said Kenny. My eds, via how I shastly, and to vary my dreams with sorrow, who knows Kenji's best with the wrong style, succeeded. In this moment, Lothish pressed me. We had my lugs, lost by. I was my day, in day, my love for my body, and body control in the process of deadly pain. You were tack Zanny to remote needing me. You were tack safe in the world of my life to practive to undoing life and better fucking to shaping to me that persecuted all loving and read to me to just pour my to Kanji Vanapson mentioned blocking what he loved when you followed in common. To Kanji what he did not love. To Kanji when he followed a Dakami Sarah, that perfect part of us that I did not love. I bill oafs who are some my applaudable illusions, striving for ni a shafat, striving for ni a shafat, and full it weak, they smealed me all the way
to prosecute how immediately they spend my millions. Come now up, Mrs. Kenji Sato. And Zekonna Rezalusum fall sleep, and solemnly a profound bitter realization. The escalation didn't happen with a bang. It happened in the quiet, uncomfortable spaces between lies. By the time we were 3 months out from the wedding, the atmospheric pressure in our penthouse had changed. Kenji was no longer the attentive fiancé who brought me ginger tea. He was stressed. He was on calls with Tokyo. He was constantly clutching his phone like a holy relic he was afraid I'd desecrate. As a graphic designer, my entire life is built on observing details that others miss. I notice when a kerning pair is off by 1 pixel. I notice when a color hex code is slightly too warm for the brand identity. And I started noticing the glitches in Kenji's reality. It started with the Uber receipts. Since Kenji was supposedly using my corporate accounts to manage wedding logistics, the statements came to my email. I noticed a recurring pattern. Rides to a high-end apartment complex in Mission Bay at 2 a.m. on nights when he told me he was sleeping in the guest room at the office because he worked too late. I checked the address. It wasn't an office building. It was a luxury residential tower. When I asked him about it, he didn't even blink. Oh, that's where the lead developer for the new fund lives, Hana. We're doing late-night sprints for the launch. I told you, I'm doing this for us. Don't tell me you're becoming one of those paranoid, clingy wives before we're even married. It's beneath you. He used my own pride against me. He knew I valued my independence and my cool girl status. So, I bit my tongue. But then came the incident with the consultation fees. Sarah, acting as the wedding planner, was submitting invoices that looked like they'd been drafted by a drunk toddler. For someone who claimed to be a dusty, high-end marketing coordinator, her bookkeeping was abysmal. One Tuesday, while she was over at the penthouse spreading fabric swatches across my dining table, her phone buzzed. She was in the kitchen pouring herself a glass of my expensive Sancerre. I looked down at the screen. It was a notification from a luxury jewelry boutique. Thank you for your purchase, Miss Tanaka. Your custom 18K gold tennis bracelet is ready for pickup. Tanaka, that's Kenji's last name. My heart did a slow, painful somersault in my chest. Sarah's last name was Meller. Why was she receiving notifications under Kenji's surname? I didn't say anything. I watched her walk back into the room, swirling her wine, looking at me with those pitying eyes. You look tired, Hana, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. Maybe you should take a weekend off, go to a spa. Kenji and I can handle the final tasting with the caterers. You're just so frazzled lately. The word frazzled felt like a slap. I wasn't frazzled. I was waking up. That night, I waited until Kenji was in the shower. I know, you're not supposed to look through your partner's things, but when you're paying for the floor he stands on and the water he's using to wash off another woman's scent, the rules of etiquette go out the window. I tried his birthday, locked. I tried our anniversary, locked. Then, on a whim, I tried Sarah's birthday. Click. The phone opened. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I didn't find nudes. I didn't find I love you texts. What I found was much, much worse. I found a group chat titled Operation Golden Goose. The participants were Kenji, Sarah, and a third person I didn't recognize, likely a lawyer or a shady accountant. I scrolled through months of messages. They were clinical. They talked about me like I was a piece of livestock. They were prepping for slaughter. Kenji, Hana's dad, just moved the 5 meters into the escrow. How soon can we shell it out to the Shell Corp in Belize? Sarah, wait until after the legal ceremony. California is a community property state. If you sign the papers on Saturday, you're entitled to half of her design firm's valuation if we play the emotional distress card later. Kenji, God, I can't wait to stop pretending to like her family's tea ceremonies. I need a real drink and a real woman. See you at the Mission Bay spot in 20. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to lean against the wall to keep from vomiting. They weren't just having an affair. They were running a long con. Every kiss, every I love you,
every wedding dress fitting where Sarah pretended to cry. It was all a performance designed to keep the Golden Goose laying eggs. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. My hands were ice cold, but my mind was suddenly terrifyingly clear. I'm a designer. When a project is failing, you don't just keep tweaking the colors. You scrap the whole thing and start over. But I couldn't just leave. If I left now, they'd keep the $5 million from my father. They'd keep the consultation fees. They'd walk away with their pockets full and their reputations intact. No, in our culture, when someone steals your face, you don't just take it back. You make sure they never have a face to show the world again. The next day, I went to see my father. He was in his study, looking at a bonsai tree he'd been shaping for 20 years. He looked up and saw me, and for the first time in my life, he didn't see his little girl. He saw a woman who was ready for war. The $5 million, Papa, I said, sitting across from him. How is it structured? He narrowed his eyes. It's a convertible loan to Kenji's fund, contingent on the marriage. Why? Don't move the rest of the funds, I said, my voice as hard as flint, and I need your private security team. The one you used for the corporate espionage suite 3 years ago. I need them to follow Sarah, and I need a digital forensics expert who can ghost a phone without leaving a trace. My father didn't ask questions. He just picked up his phone. Is he hurting you? No, I replied, a dark smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. But he's about to wish he had. Over the next 2 weeks, the rising tension became my fuel. I played the part of the stressed, oblivious bride to perfection. I let Sarah upcharge me for a floral wall we didn't need. I let Kenji borrow another $50,000 for a bridge loan. Every dollar they took was another nail I was prep hammering into their coffins. I watched them through the lens of the private investigators. I saw photos of them at the Mission Bay apartment. I saw photos of them at the jewelry store, Kenji laughing as he draped that gold bracelet, my gold bracelet, around Sarah's wrist. I even had audio of them in a restaurant, joking about how they were going to sell my engagement ring after the divorce and buy a yacht. The tension wasn't in the fear of being caught anymore. The tension was in my own chest, a coiled spring waiting for the moment I could finally let go. I was attending couples counseling with Kenji, sitting on a leather sofa and listening to him lie about his commitment to our future. While in my purse, I had a flash drive with every single one of his fraudulent bank transfers logged and dated. I just feel like we're not connecting, Kenji, I said during one session, forcing my eyes to well up with fake tears. He took my hand, his skin feeling like a reptile's against mine. Honey, it's just pre-wedding jitters. I promise, once we say I do, everything is going to be perfect. Just trust me. I do trust you, I whispered. And I did. I trusted him to be exactly the greedy, arrogant sociopath I'd finally realized he was. The stage was set. The guest list was finalized. All the major players in the tech and venture capital world would be there. Kenji's parents, who worshipped the ground he walked on. My father's business rivals. The press. They wanted a show. They wanted the wedding of the year, and I was going to give it to them. But the finale wasn't going to be a fireworks display. It was going to be a demolition. They say that when you're looking for the truth, you should be prepared for it to hurt. But hurt is too small a word for what happened 10 days before the wedding. It was a Tuesday, the day I was supposed to have my final dress fitting at the boutique. I had told Kenji I'd be gone all afternoon, and Sarah was supposed to be at the venue checking the lighting rigs. But I wasn't at the boutique. I was sitting in a nondescript black SUV 3 blocks away from our penthouse, wearing a baseball cap and oversized sunglasses, staring at a tablet. My father's security team had finally finished installing the software updates on our home security system. In reality, they had bypassed the encryption Kenji thought he'd set up and given me a god view of my own home. I watched the screen as the elevator doors opened. Kenji walked in, but he wasn't alone. Sarah was with him, but she wasn't carrying wedding planners or fabric swatches. She was carrying a bottle of tequila and wearing a dress I bought her for her birthday last year. The audio kicked in. It was horrifyingly clear. Finally, Kenji groaned, throwing his keys on the marble counter, the counter I'd paid a premium to have imported from Italy. I thought she'd never leave, the way she was clinging to me this morning. I swear, Sarah, I deserve an Oscar for not recoiling every time she touches me. Sarah laughed, that high-pitched, melodic sound that I used to find comforting. Now, it sounded like a drill against my teeth. Only 10 more days, baby. 10 days of playing the loving maid of honor, and then we can stop this charade. Did the final wire go through? Kenji pulled her close, his hands wandering with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. 5 million from the old man is sitting in the clearing account. The second we sign the marriage license, I'm triggering the investment transfer to the shell company in Panama. By the time Hana realizes the money is gone, we'll be halfway across the world, and she'll be tied up in so much legal red tape she won't be able to breathe. And the prenup? Sarah asked, her voice muffled against his neck. Modified. Kenji smirked. I swapped the signature pages on the final draft. She signed the one that grants me a lifestyle maintenance clause in case of a no-fault divorce. I'll make her life a living hell for 6 months. She'll beg for a divorce, and I'll walk away with half of everything she built while she was working late to pay for her life. But that wasn't the breaking point. The breaking point came 10 minutes later. They moved to the master bedroom, my bedroom. I watched on the small screen as they threw my decorative pillows, the ones I'd spent weeks choosing to match the room's aesthetic, onto the floor. And then I saw something that broke something deep inside my soul. Kenji reached into his nightstand and pulled out a small, silk-lined box. It was a necklace. I recognized it instantly. It was my mother's pearl strand, the one she had left to me before she passed away. It was a family heirloom, passed down through 4 generations of Japanese women. I had mentioned to Kenji that I wanted to wear it on my wedding day as my something old. He draped it around Sarah's neck. This looks much better on you anyway, Kenji whispered. Hana is too traditional, too stiff. You actually have the soul to wear something this beautiful. Sarah preened in front of the mirror, touching the pearls, my mother's pearls, with her grimy, deceitful fingers. I'm going to wear these to our real wedding, Kenji. The one on the beach, without the 300 boring guests and the face we have to save. I dropped the tablet. My hands weren't shaking. They were frozen. A cold, absolute void opened up in the center of my being. Up until that moment, part of me, the weak, pathetic part, had hoped I was wrong. I had hoped the private investigators were misinterpreting things. I had hoped the financial discrepancies were just Kenji being bad with money, but seeing my mother's pearls on that woman, seeing them desecrate the one thing I held sacred, that was the end of Hana the designer. I got out of the car. I didn't go into the building. I couldn't. If I had walked in there, I would have killed them both. I knew it. My father's blood, the blood of men who built empires out of iron and discipline, was screaming in my ears. I walked down to the pier and stood by the water for 3 hours. I thought about the last 3 years. I thought about every time I'd stayed up until dawn to finish a project so I could afford the life Kenji wanted. I thought about every time Sarah had cried on my shoulder about her failed relationships, while all the while she was sleeping with my man in my bed. I thought about the sheer, arrogant stupidity of them, believing they could steal from a family that had survived wars and economic collapses just by being charming. They thought I was a golden goose. They forgot that a goose is just a bird, but a dragon is a legend. I called my father, Papa. I said, my voice so cold it felt like it was cracking the phone screen. I need you to contact the commissioner of the SFPD. And I need the AV company we hired for the wedding to send their lead technician to a private meeting at your office in 1 hour. No Kenji. No Sarah. Hana? My father's voice was low, concerned. What happened? They took Mom's pearls, I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My father loved my mother with a ferocity that was quiet but absolute. I see, he said. The technician will be there. What else? I need a forensic accountant to trace the lifestyle maintenance clause in the prenup. I need to know exactly which notary Kenji used to swap the pages. He was sloppy, Papa. He thinks he's smarter than me because I'm a woman. He thinks he's smarter than you because you're old school. He's about to learn that old school means we know where the bodies are buried because we're the ones who dug the holes. The next few days were a blur of cold, calculated preparation. I moved all my personal belongings, the things that actually mattered, out of the penthouse and into a secure storage unit while Kenji was at his meetings. I replaced my mother's pearls with a high-quality glass imitation I bought at a costume shop. Sarah didn't even notice the difference when she put them back in the drawer. I met with the AV lead, a guy named Marcus. I showed him the footage. I told him what I wanted. Marcus was a professional, but even he looked pale after seeing the clips. "You want me to override the entire feed during the vows?" he asked. "Not just override it," I said. "I want it looped. I want the audio to be at maximum volume. I want the guests in the back row to hear every word of their Panama plan." "And Marcus? Make sure the live stream to Kenji's parents in Tokyo is high definition. I want them to see their son's disgrace in 4K. I was no longer frazzled. I was a machine. I went to the final dress fitting and smiled at my reflection. The white lace looked like armor. I went to the rehearsal dinner and toasted to friendship and loyalty, looking Sarah right in the eye. She smiled back, a shark in a bridesmaid dress, completely unaware that she was already bleeding in the water. The night before the wedding, Kenji tried to be intimate. He came into the room, smelling of expensive scotch and the faint, lingering scent of Sarah's perfume. "One more day, Hana," he whispered, reaching for me, "and then we're forever." I turned away, feigning sleep. "One more day, Kenji," I agreed. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes. I wasn't sad. I wasn't grieving. I was just waiting for the sun to rise so I could burn their world to the ground. The morning of the wedding was eerily still. A thick fog rolled off the San Francisco Bay, wrapping the city in a gray shroud that felt more like a funeral than a celebration. I woke up at 5 a.m., long before the hair and makeup team arrived. I sat on the edge of the bed in our guest room. I hadn't slept in the master's suite since the night I saw the footage, and drank a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, just the bitter, grounding reality of the task ahead. I looked at my hands. They were perfectly still. No tremors, no cold sweat. I felt like an actor, backstage before the performance of a lifetime. Today, I wasn't Hana, the graphic designer. I was Hana, the executioner. By 8 a.m., the penthouse was a whirlwind of activity. Sarah arrived first, bursting through the door with a garment bag and a fake, manic energy. She was wearing a maid of honor silk robe that I had paid for. Every time she touched me, adjusting a stray hair, patting my shoulder, I felt a jolt of electricity, the kind that makes your hair stand on end before a lightning strike. "Oh, Hannah, you look so ethereal," she chirped, looking at me through the vanity mirror. "Kenji's going to lose his mind when he sees you. Are you nervous? You're so quiet today." "I'm just taking it all in, Sarah," I said, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "You only get a day like this once in a lifetime. I want to make sure every single detail is memorable." She smiled, and for a second, I saw the flicker of something in her eyes. Greed, perhaps, or triumph. She thought she'd won. She thought the Golden Goose was finally in the cage. She spent the next 2 hours managing the photographers and the florist, acting like the queen of the manor. I watched her check her phone every 5 minutes, undoubtedly texting Kenji updates on my vulnerable state. At 10 a.m., my father arrived. He was dressed in a traditional black formal kimono, his posture rigid. When the makeup artist stepped away for a break, he walked over to me. He didn't say, "I'm proud of you," or "You look beautiful." He simply leaned in and whispered, "The legal team is stationed at the side entrance of the cathedral. The AV technician Marcus has confirmed the uplink is active. The second notary, the real one, is waiting in the vestry with the revised documents. Are you sure you want to go through with the public display, Hana? We can stop this now and just sue them into the Stone Age." "No, Papa," I said, my voice barely a whisper but as sharp as a katana. In our world, a lawsuit is just a business expense. Public shame, loss of face, that is a death sentence. I want everyone to see who they really are. I want Kenji's father to see what his son has become. I want Sarah to never be able to show her face in this city again. My father nodded slowly. Then we finish it. The drive to St. Jude's Cathedral was a blur of police escorts and flashing cameras. The wedding had become a minor social media event in the city, the tech heiress marrying the investment prodigy. As the limousine pulled up to the stone steps, I saw the crowd, friends, business rivals, journalists, and Kenji's extended family who had flown in from Tokyo. I stepped out of the car, the heavy silk of my Vera Wang dress trailing behind me. It weighed nearly 30 pounds, but I felt light. I felt like I was floating. Inside the vestry, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive incense. Kenji's best man came in to check on us. He looked nervous, sweating through his tuxedo. I knew why. He was part of the Mission Bay crowd. He knew about Sarah. He probably thought I was the world's biggest fool. I smiled at him, a small, cryptic smile, and he practically ran out of the room. 10 minutes before the ceremony, Sarah came in to fix my veil. "I have the pearls, Hana," she said, reaching for the jewelry box. She pulled out the glass imitations I'd planted. I watched her hands as she fastened them around my neck. Her fingers brushed my skin, and I had to clench my teeth to keep from recoiling. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "A perfect legacy." "They are exactly what you deserve to be touching, Sarah," I replied. She frowned, confused for a heartbeat, but then her phone buzzed again, and she was distracted by a text from Kenji. "Ready to collect." I saw the screen flash before she tucked it away. The organ began to roar. The heavy oak doors of the cathedral swung open. I took my father's arm. My grip was so tight I could feel the muscle in his forearm. We began the long walk down the aisle. The cathedral was a sea of faces. 300 people, all dressed in their finest, watching the beautiful bride. At the end of the aisle stood Kenji. He looked magnificent. He was smiling that perfect, rehearsed smile, the one that had fooled me for 3 years. He looked like the hero of a movie. As I reached the altar, Kenji took my hand from my father. His palm was warm. Mine was ice. He leaned in and whispered, "You look like $1 billion, Hana." "Actually, Kenji," I whispered back, "I'm worth a lot more than that." He chuckled, thinking I was joking. The priest began the ceremony. The traditional Japanese elements were first. The sharing of the sack, the symbolic binding of the families. I went through the motions with the precision of a robot. My heart was thumping in my ears, but it wasn't from fear. It was the countdown. Then came the moment for the modern tribute. This was the part Sarah had planned. A 10-minute slideshow of our journey together, projected onto the massive 40-foot LED screen that hung above the altar. This was the centerpiece of the wedding's visual design. Kenji turned to the audience, his arm around my waist, looking like the proudest man on earth. He wanted everyone to see how much I adored him. He wanted the visual proof of his conquest before he triggered the Panama transfer. Marcus, the AV tech, caught my eye from the balcony. I gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod. The lights in the cathedral dimmed. The guests went quiet, awes rippling through the rows. The screen flickered to life. The first image wasn't of us in Tokyo. It wasn't our engagement photo. It was a black screen with white text, designed in my signature corporate font. Investment strategy, the Golden Goose protocol. The crowd shifted. I felt Kenji's arms stiffen against my ribs. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice cracking. "Hana, what did the AV guys do? Just watch, Kenji," I said, my voice loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. "I think this is the part where you tell everyone how much you value our partnership." Then the audio started. The subwoofers I'd paid extra for kicked in, filling the cathedral with Kenji's own voice, distorted but unmistakable. "She's so easy to play. Her dad's trust fund is basically an open ATM." The modern tribute had begun. And the look on Kenji's face as his own image, naked and laughing on my grandmother's sofa, appeared on the 40-foot screen was worth every single cent of the $5 million he thought he was stealing. The atmosphere in St. Jude's Cathedral shifted from celebratory to radioactive in a matter of seconds. It was a physical sensation, like a sudden drop in temperature. On the giant screen, the 4K footage played with brutal clarity. There was Kenji, the investment prodigy, casually tossing a folder labeled Hana's Trust, Q4, onto my coffee table, while Sarah leaned over him, her laughter echoing through the church's high-domed ceiling like the cackle of a hyena. Once the papers are signed today, I'm moving the first $500,000 to the Cayman account, the digital Kenji boasted. The audio was so loud it felt like the voice of an angry god. I looked at the real Kenji. The blood had completely left his face, leaving him a sickly parchment paper gray. He tried to pull his arm away from my waist, but I grabbed his tuxedo sleeve with a grit of iron. I didn't just want him to see it. I wanted him to feel the weight of what was happening. "Hana, stop this! Turn it off!" he yelled, but his voice was thin and reedy compared to the thunderous sound system. He looked toward the AV booth, screaming for Marcus, but Marcus was gone, and the controls were locked behind a triple encrypted firewall my father's tech team had built. The congregation was in total chaos. I saw my father's business rivals leaning forward, their phones out, recording every second. I saw Kenji's father, a man of immense dignity and traditional values, slowly stand up. He looked at the screen, then at his son, and his expression was one of such profound shame that I almost felt a flicker of pity. Almost. Then came the clip of the pearls. The screen showed Sarah preening in my mirror, my mother's heirloom strand around her neck. Hana is too stiff. She doesn't have the soul for these. A collective gasp went up from the front rows. My aunts and cousins, who knew exactly what those pearls meant, were looking at Sarah with eyes that could have set her on fire. Sarah, who had been standing proudly just moments ago, was now trying to shrink behind a flower arrangement. She looked like a trapped animal, her eyes darting toward the side exits. "Going somewhere, Sarah?" I asked, my voice amplified by the lapel mic I was still wearing. It boomed through the cathedral, cutting through the murmurs like a knife. I turned to face them both. I didn't look like a heartbroken bride. I looked like a queen presiding over an execution. "You thought I was a golden goose, didn't you, Kenji?" I said, stepping toward him as he backed into the altar rail. "You thought my family was just an open ATM. You spent 3 years pretending to love me, pretending to respect my father, all while you and my best friend were plotting to leave me homeless. Hana, it's not what it looks like." Kenji stammered, his hand shaking so violently he nearly tripped over my train. "That video it's AI. It's a deepfake. I've been framed by your father's competitors." I let out a laugh, a cold, sharp sound that felt good in my throat. "Deepfake? Really? Is the lifestyle maintenance clause you tried to sneak into the prenup a deepfake too? Or the 3 luxury condos in Panama you bought with my father's seed money?" I reached into the hidden pocket of my dress, the one I'd had the tailor add specifically for this moment, and pulled out a stack of high-resolution printouts. I didn't give them to him. I handed them to the priest, who was standing there in stunned silence, and then I tossed the rest into the front row for the guests to see. "Those are the bank records, Kenji. Traced, verified, and notarized. Every dollar you stole from my father's trust, every consultation fee Sarah charged for work she never did, and every flight you took to Mission Bay on my corporate card." Sarah finally broke. "Hana, please! I was broke. Kenji said you wouldn't miss it. He said you had so much it didn't even matter." "Oh, it matters now," I said, turning to her. "The pearls you're wearing right now, they're fake, Sarah. Just like your friendship. I have the real ones safe in a vault. And the dress you're wearing, I've already canceled the payment to the designer. You'll be getting a bill for that tomorrow, along with a summons." At that moment, the side doors of the cathedral didn't just open. They were pushed. 2 men in suits, followed by 2 uniformed officers from the SFPD, walked down the center aisle. My father had timed it to the second. "Kenji Sato?" the lead officer said, his voice echoing. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft. You'll need to come with us." The silence that followed was deafening. The 300 guests, the elite of the industry, the people Kenji had spent his whole life trying to impress, watched in absolute stillness as the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. His face wasn't just gone, it was obliterated. He looked at his father, pleading, but the old man turned his back on him, literally disowning him in front of the world. Sarah tried to slip away during the arrest, but my father's security team blocked her path. Miss Miller, one of them, said, "We have a civil process server here for you. You're being sued for $5 million in damages and emotional distress, and we've already filed a lien against your marketing firm and your new Mercedes." I stood there, at the center of the wreckage, as they were led away. I looked at the 40-foot screen. Marcus had changed the loop. Now, it was just a still image of the Panama Shell Company's articles of incorporation, with Kenji and Sarah's signatures highlighted in red. The priest cleared his throat, looking terrified. Do we continue? I looked at the guests. I looked at my father, who was now standing at the end of the aisle, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. I reached up, unfastened the glass pearls from my neck, and let them fall to the stone floor. They shattered with a satisfying clink. "No," I said, picking up my train and walking down the steps of the altar. "There isn't going to be a wedding today, but I believe there's an open bar and $5,000 worth of sushi waiting at the reception. I suggest everyone goes and enjoys it. It's all been paid for with Kenji's exit fund." As I walked down the aisle, the crowd didn't just move aside, they stood and applauded. It wasn't the polite applause of a wedding. It was the roar of people who had just seen a master class in justice. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of Kenji in handcuffs and Sarah sobbing in her bridesmaid dress was burned into the back of my eyelids, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever designed. It's been exactly 12 months since the wedding of the century ended in a double arrest and a shattered glass heirloom. People in San Francisco still talk about it. In certain venture capital circles, they've even turned my name into a verb. To hana, someone means to wait until they think they've won, and then systematically dismantle their entire existence in the most public way possible. It's a reputation I wear like a badge of honor. The legal fallout was even more devastating than the altar reveal. Because Kenji had been so arrogant, he'd left a digital paper trail a mile long. He thought his shell companies were sophisticated, but he'd used his own birth date as part of the encryption keys for several accounts. My father's forensic accountants, working alongside the SFPD's white-collar crime unit, spent 6 months unraveling the knots. Kenji is currently serving a 7-year sentence in a federal correctional institution for wire fraud and interstate transport of stolen property. He tried to take a plea deal offering to testify against Sarah, but the prosecutors didn't need him. I had already provided them with everything. Last I heard, his old money family in Tokyo has completely scrubbed him from the family tree. In their culture, he no longer exists. He's a ghost, a man without a past or a future. He sends me letters sometimes, pleading for forgiveness or asking for money for his legal appeals. I don't open them. I have a dedicated shredder in my office, specifically for mail from the Bureau of Prisons. As for Sarah, her downfall was less about prison and more about the slow, agonizing death of her social status. The civil suit I filed against her was relentless. I didn't just want the $5 million back. I wanted everything she'd ever touched. I won a judgment that allowed me to seize her assets, including that white Mercedes and the Dior wardrobe she'd bought with my money. She's back in her hometown now, somewhere in the Midwest, reportedly working as a shift manager at a discount retail chain. Every time she looks at a high-end fashion magazine and sees my firm's work on the cover, I hope she feels that same cold knot of dread I felt in the SUV that Tuesday. She's banned from every major social club in California. In the age of Google, her face is permanently stained. She is a pariah in the only world she ever wanted to belong to. The penthouse is gone. I sold it 2 weeks after the wedding. I didn't want to live in a place where those two had breathed, let alone slept. I bought a minimalist house in the hills of Marin, overlooking the Pacific. It's quiet there. No marble counters from Italy, no hidden cameras, and most importantly, no lies. My father and I are closer than ever. He finally retired last month, handing over the remains of his investment portfolio, the parts Kenji didn't manage to touch, to a reputable firm run by a woman I've known for years. We spent last weekend in Napa not talking about synergy or market disruption, but just sitting by the koi pond in silence. He gave me back my mother's pearls on the morning of what would have been my first anniversary. You wore the fake ones with more grace than most women wear the real thing, he told me. I keep them in a safe now, not because I'm afraid they'll be stolen, but because they represent a version of me that I never want to lose again, the woman who knows her own value. My design firm has tripled in size. It turns out that being the Dragon of San Francisco is great for business. Clients don't just come to me for branding anymore. They come to me because they know I have an eye for the truth. They know I won't let a single detail slide. I've become a mentor for young women in the industry, teaching them the most important lesson I ever learned. Trust is earned, not given, and your bank account is not a substitute for your intuition. I haven't started dating again. People ask me if I'm cynical or broken. I tell them no, I'm not broken. I'm refined. Like gold put through a furnace, the impurities of my life, the Kenjis and the Sarahs, have been burned away, leaving something much harder and much more valuable behind. Last month, I was at a gallery opening when a man tried to strike up a conversation. He was charming, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, and started talking about disruptive technology. I looked at him, smiled a small, knowing smile, and walked away before he could even finish his pitch. I don't need a venture consultant to tell me what my future looks like. I'm the one designing it now. The final victory, though, wasn't the court case or the bank accounts. It was a small thing. I was cleaning out some old files when I found the tribute slideshow Marcus had made for me. I didn't delete it. I kept it on a thumb drive in my desk. Every once in a while, when I feel myself becoming too soft or too trusting, I watch the first 30 seconds. I hear Kenji's voice talking about the Golden Goose, and I remember the sound of those glass pearls shattering on the cathedral floor. It's a reminder that revenge isn't just about hurting the people who hurt you. It's about reclaiming the narrative. They tried to write a story where I was the victim, the gullible heiress who got played by the smart guy and his pretty accomplice. But I edited that script. I changed the ending. In their version, they were in the Maldives with my money. In my version, I'm in my home by the sea, watching the sunset, and they are exactly where they belong, in the past. Success is the best revenge, they say, but I disagree. Success is just the foundation. The best revenge is watching your enemies realize that the person they thought was their greatest prize was actually their greatest mistake. I am Hana Tanaka. I am a designer, a daughter, and a survivor, and I have never been more beautiful than I am right now, standing in the ruins of the life they tried to steal from me.